Thank you. So we had a couple of questions that came in prior to the call. Greg will read the first one for us.
Can you tell us more about this first early adopter unit and who is it going to and where is it located?
Absolutely. So this first early adopter unit is actually going to the U.S. Navy. As you may recall, last quarter we had announced that we extended our Navy contract for another $16 million. So we've been working with the Navy for multiple years now, and it got extended. And then this first unit is going to the Navy. For a little bit of background, the long-term goal of our relationship with the Navy is to use the KARNO generator both in military vessels as well as in stationary applications. Actually, pretty exciting. We just recently received first photos of the ship that we'll actually be putting the KARNO generator into. It's being built presently. So a great opportunity here. That initial unit will be staying in Ohio initially for further testing, validation, going through test protocols that the Navy has outlined. And then from there, we'll be producing further units, and then it will be going into both ship and stationary applications.
Our question comes from the line of Sean Milligan with Janney. Please go ahead.
Hey, Thomas. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think in the past you've made some comments about KARNO's I guess the ability for KARNO to compete against fuel cells, hydrogen fuel cells. We've seen Bloom announce kind of larger deals in the data center space. So I was just curious if you could remind us how KARNO fits in the competitive landscape against fuel cells, and then also what we're seeing out of some of these kind of larger prime power nat gas gen sets that are being announced in data centers also. That's my first question.
Absolutely. So I think you're touching on the thread of data centers. We're seeing this shift to make your own power, right? And in the past, it's been tap into the grid and just have backup on-site power supply. Now it's moving to make your own power, prime power application, which is extremely exciting for us because that's where the KARNO generator really shines. Now, to your point, we have seen companies like Bloom have made announcements that they're working with data centers. I think recently they announced up to a gigawatt of deployments with one customer. So what's exciting for us is we see that we bring forward those alternative new energy benefits like the low emissions aspect, but also bring forward a lot more as well. So very compact footprint with the KARNO generator, which is critical for the data center space. Even more compact than conventional natural gas or diesel engines that we'd maybe be competing with as well. And then we have the added benefits of the fuel flexibility, the ultra low maintenance, and then, as I mentioned before, the low emissions. So when you tie all those together, we're seeing a lot of interest coming forward from the data center space, which is highlighted by this LOI that we announced on today's call, which is we've established a partner to be the first data center customer to deploy with that 2-megawatt system. And then in that same LOI, we've outlined a multi-year opportunity that could get to up to 70 megawatts of deployed KARNO generators.
Okay, great. Is there a way to think about kind of pricing for KARNO versus some of the traditional nat gas gen sets in the data center space, or like maybe where the crossover happens, where it might be more beneficial to have a KARNO than the nat gas gen set?
Yeah, so just to put some numbers to it, so a conventional nat gas engine that's for prime power could be between $1,000 to $1,500 per kilowatt. Then when you look at fuel cells, we're seeing those are usually around $3,000 to $3,500 per kilowatt. What we've said is we're somewhere kind of in between, in the middle of the two of those on our pricing. So we are at a premium to a conventional engine, but less than the fuel cell players. And in terms of the ROI, though, I think that's where we see where we shine and frankly what customers really care about, right? They're less worried about the upfront capital cost, more about is this going to be economical in the long run. And so since we're able to provide a superior efficiency compared to a conventional natural gas engine, as well as we expect to have lower maintenance in addition to that, that drives that the ROI usually looks pretty compelling, especially for some of these programs, which are looking at 10 plus years, 15 plus years, where they would be having these assets deployed.
Okay, thank you. And just kind of to stay on that line of thought, you mentioned the new GEV printer prints at a multiple of what you're using currently. I mean, the pathway to drive down your costs. Can you talk about the visibility you have there in terms of the additive printing, just the scale as you scale up and as you move to new printers? One, how can that impact your costs? And then two, the ability to ramp quickly. So you mentioned 70 megawatts potentially with that data center customer. I mean, how quickly can you order printers and get them operable?
Yeah, so a couple of layers there. So I'll answer the last part first. So we already have more of these M-Line printers on order throughout 2025, which will help us with scaling capacity for 2026. And then the best way to think about it is probably in that 6 to 12 months as to from when you order to when you'd be getting additional assets in for more printing capacity. Obviously, the more visibility we can give to GE, our supplier, on that, the better off we are on lead times. Now, in terms of cost down, I would break it into two different buckets. So the first is what you touched on, which is how fast can these printers produce units. So the great thing with this M-Line is compared to past printer technology that we are still operating and it's still great, but the M-Line can now print anywhere from 2 to 4 times as many parts at once as compared to the past generations of technology. So that allows us to increase throughput. But then the other nice thing is we already have a roadmap from GE of how that same printer, that M-Line, will be able to be improved and modified over time to continue to increase its throughput. So we see that as a great platform for scaling up manufacturing for us because not only is it faster today, but then it has capabilities as we go forward. The second aspect of cost down, though, is just working with our supply base. And I would actually say that is probably where the greater focus is presently on our end of right now we've been buying components at kind of that initial R&D sort of cost levels. We need to move into having agreements with our suppliers, volume commitments, driving costs down. And I actually think that's where we're going to see more of our cost savings coming from than the printer side, just because we're actually already in an okay position on printer throughput.
Okay, great. I'll turn it back. And if there's not any more questions, I have a couple more.
Sure. So we've got another question that came in beforehand.
You announced an LOI with Alcorev. Can you share more about the Middle East opportunity, and will this be your first international deployment?
Yeah, so we're excited to have announced this. Alcorev is a leading provider of generators in the Middle East, as well as a dominant player in the agricultural space. And so these initial gensets will be being used in farm applications as well as other applications to provide prime power. Now, what's exciting about this is I recently just did a trip over to the Middle East, and what was very different compared to the U.S. is most facilities already have diesel engines, generators connected to them. And then in some instances, we heard a story of a warehouse where they were operating the entire facility off of diesel engines for 10 years before that customer was able to get a grid interconnect. And so that's also very different. And so the region is already used to using engines, using generators. And so as we think about deploying KARNO generators there, you're kind of bringing forward this modular power plant, the performance levels of a power plant, but doing it on a small scale and being able to use fuels like diesel or future fuels that the region is looking to move to, like LPG so that allows us to not only give them a solution that has lower operating costs, lower maintenance, but also has this fuel flexibility to meet the goals of the region. So it's something we're excited about. In addition to that, we also have announced a LOI with Jardine, which it would be for Hong Kong. So we see, international markets as being extremely promising for this technology. And then we'll hand the call back over to Sean. I think you said you had some additional questions.
You all, operating and maintaining the KARNOs, is there some type of service contract there? I was curious because like Solaris signed a Prime Power deal recently where they formed a JV with the data center customer, and they're kind of capturing economics more on the power gen side. So just, I guess, thoughts about the business model moving forward with data centers. Is it just for sales, or is there some other kind of revenue stream that we should think about there?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it's going to be us maintaining these generators that are out in the field. Long term, though, we would want to partner with others who already are established in that space and have them take on the maintenance, or some of the end customers that we're working with have expressed interest that they would potentially want to take on the maintenance as well. So in the short term, it will be us doing that, but long term, we'd want to work with others to take on that part of the business as opposed to us having to set up brick and mortar facilities all across the U.S. or globally as well.
Okay. And then just confidence in terms of, you mentioned some supply chain issues, ramping up the contract manufacturer, and then the metal powder issue, just confidence that you've kind of worked through those. How long did you have that early adopter system like operating at your facilities and working through issues before they go out into the field? Just any kind of thought process there would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just to add color to both of the challenges that we faced this past quarter. So on the linear electric motor, just for clarity for anyone on the call, so this is the coils, the magnets in the center of the KARNO generator that actually produce electricity. Now, this is a Hyliion designed, Hyliion's IP solution, and actually the initial generators that we made, we used components that we produced in-house for the linear electric motor. We decided to shift that process to a contract manufacturer, and unfortunately that process just took longer than anticipated, and there were some things we needed to work through, and so that's what shifted us in not getting initial deliveries of LEMs from the contract manufacturer until early 25, which was a push out in the delivery of the first early adopter unit. And so from that end, we've started production, we started getting units from them, and so I think we're in a good shape there. The goal over the quarters and months ahead here is going to be scaling up the throughput. And then on the depowder side of things, so a little bit more color for anyone who's not familiar with additive printing. So you're taking basically metal powder and welding it, and that's what's producing the parts. But what that means is there's a lot of residual metal powder in the part, around the part, that you need to remove before using it. And what we found was we were getting some metal powder trapped that we weren't able to extract out of the process sufficiently. So we changed our cleaning process, but then even still, we see opportunities where we can do some part enhancements, changes, improve the cleaning even further as we go forward. So that's something that will continue to happen, but we have gotten to a point where we've been able to clean the parts sufficiently enough to start shipping these units. So hopefully that's some helpful background on kind of what we encountered as we were getting these early units ready. We believe we're in a good position now, but we'll continue to work on refining them as we go forward.
Great. Thank you for all the time, Thomas.
Great. I believe that concludes the questions we had. So I appreciate everyone joining today's call. A lot of progress over the past quarter. Extremely excited to get this initial early adopter unit out there. Excited to, over the months and quarters ahead here, to continue to deliver additional early adopter units, and then to continue to update you on the next earnings call as to how those deployments are going and the performance of the systems. Thank you all for joining.